day to our K-Info Sorte. For today, we will talk about one of the three branches of the government in the Philippines, also known as the legislative branch, the executive branch, and lastly, the judicial branch.
But wait, do you guys have any idea what these three branches are or what their responsibilities are? Before we answer that, let us first introduce ourselves. Hi to our ka-infos out there, I'm Leona Pangan,
Lebron, Bautista.
Charlene. This is Rebasto,
Jannah Punio,
Eustaquio,
Zeta Teodosio.
Augustine Acoey.
Hi, I'm Lorelie Pagtakhan.
And Rodel and Balmores.
We are the Informative Squad!
As my co-member said a while ago, for today, we will talking about one of the three branches of the government in the Philippines. But, do you guys have any idea what these three branches are for? Or what are their responsibilities?
The lawmakers are the legislative branch that is vested in both the government and the two-chamber Congress, which is the Senate or the upper chamber, and the House of Representatives, which is the lower chamber.
The judicial branch is vested in the courts with the Supreme Court of the Philippines as the highest judicial body. It is also responsible in moderation and interpretation of laws made by the legislative branch.
Lastly is the executive branch, which we will further discuss on this video.
I do know that in our country, the executive department is consisted of the president, the vice president, and the cabinet members, along with the mayor and the governors of other regions.
There are qualifications for a person that will run for the candidacy for president and vice president. First, you should be a natural-born citizen of the Philippines. This trait can be useful in the way that when you are a natural-born citizen of the Philippines, is you will use your power to grow your country because of the love you have for it. Second is you should be a registered voter and should also acquire the skill of reading and writing for you able to write, read, and understand the political connected papers that you will be managing while you are in the position. You should also be at least 40 years old on the day of the election and of course have lived in the Philippines for at least 10 years for you to know how is the current system of living in the country, and you will know what to do in return for you able to make the living of the people who is inside the country better.
Ano ba talagang ginagawa ng presidente?
OMG! Hindi niya alam!
Oras na natin to para ipaalam sa kanila kung ano nga bang ginagawa niya.
Uy! Sino ba yun niya?
Sino pa ba? E di ang tanging presidente.
Ano ba yan? Hindi niya alam ang executive department?
Executive Department. Executive, having the power to put plans, actions, or laws into effect. Department, a division of a complex whole or organized system.
Ngayon na alam na natin ang ibig sabihin ng executive department, mas maganda kung alamin pa natin ito.
The executive branch is composed of the president and the vice president who are elected by direct popular vote and serve a term of 6 years. The president has the authority to appoint his cabinet according to the Constitution. These departments comprise the majority of the country's administration.
Ano ba talaga pinakagawa nila?
Kasalukuyang termino, ang presidente natin ay si Rodrigo Roa Duterte na kung saan siya ang pinuno ng estado at ng pamahalaan. Habang ang vice-presidente naman ay si Maria Leonor Robredo o mas kilalang Leni Robredo. Siya ang ikalawa sa pinakamataas na pwesto sa executive department. Gayon din ang tungkulin ng mga nakaraang pinuno at sa mga darating pa.
Angas naman nila, Lods.
Pero paano sila natubos sa posisyon yun?
Magandang tanong yan. Napapan sa kanila ang posisyon na ito sa kaganapan ng botohan na ating tinatawag na election.
At meron tayong tinatawag na qualifications para sa mga taong tatakbo bilang presidente at vice-presidente sa eleksyon. Ang mga qualifications na ito ay: unang-una, natural-born citizen ng Pilipinas kung maipagmamalaki natin ang bansa natin sa iba. Dapat lang nagtubong Pilipino ang representative natin.
Pangalawa, rehistradong botante. Pangatlo, nakakabasa at nakakapagsulat.
Hindi ba required kung nagtapos yung mag-aaral o hindi?
Hindi naman. Basta kaya niyang basahin yung mga ipapanukala niya. At kaya niya magsulat para sa katuparan ng trabaho niya.
Number 4. At least 40 years of age on the day of election for the President and Vice President. And 5. The one who runs for President and Vice President seat should be at least a resident in the Philippines for 10 years minimum. Para naman alam nila kung ano yung kailangan ng bansang ayusin nila.
Ganun pala yun. Gets ko na, Mamsi. Pero parang ang laki naman ng tungkulin ng presidente. Pwede bang elaborate, boss?
Oo nga naman mga ka-info. Sunod naman nating alamin ang kapangyarihang taglay ng ehekutibong sangay ng pamahalaan.
Yes, because people might have a tendency to be corrupt. They might abuse their power, so there should be limitations.
Ate, tanong pala kamo ni Rodel kung ano daw powers ng presidente. Alam ba?
Ha? Bakit? Parang ba sila nagpapal?
Hindi. Ang literal mo naman.
Anong powers ba yan?
Alamin na lang natin. Shh. Huwag mo muna ako dadalhin.
The powers and limitations of the President. As stated in the Article VII of the 1987 Constitution of the Philippines, the powers of the President are used to attain peace in their governing country. These powers include executive power, appointment power, veto power, budgetary power, power to declare martial law, power of executive clemency, and diplomatic power. Let us first start with the executive power.
The executive power of the President, also known as the power of control over the executive branch, is the authority to lead and command each head of administrations and bureaus held by the government. It is also the power initiated with the responsibility to enforce and to implement the law.
The appointment power, on the other hand, is the power vested on the President to designate federal officials such as ambassadors, members of the cabinet, federal judges or the members of the Supreme Court, officers under the governmental administration, the executive of the armed forces of the Philippines, and the commissioners of the judicial and civil service commissions. These authorizations of appointing officials are given with several conditions such as:
First, the President should not appoint any officials 2 months before the next presidential election, unless necessary as stated in the Section 15 of Article VII of the Constitution. And the active President's appointments shall stay effective unless nullified by the elected President within 90 days from his assumption as stated in the Section 14 of Article VII. Second, according to the Section 7 of Article 9b of the Constitution, an elective official may not be appointed by the President unless he or she relinquishes his or her elected post, but an appointed official may occupy 2 appointed positions as decided by the President. Third, the executive officials must not appoint another official due to financial interest and special privilege in accordance with a certain administration or government-controlled agencies.
Number 4. The President can neither appoint a Judiciary or Civil Service Commission, Commission on Elections, and Commission on Audit officers, since the authority to appoint them are vested in the Supreme Court or the Judiciary branch. Number 5. Appointment of the Ombudsman must only be chosen among the listed nominees the Judicial and Bar Council recommended to the President. Number 6. The President is prohibited to designate his or her spouse and relatives within the fourth civil degree, such as A. Members of the Constitutional Commission, B. Ombudsman, C. Secretaries or undersecretaries, D. Chairman or heads of bureaus of offices, including the government-owned or controlled corporations of their subsidiaries.
The number 6 prohibition is also called the rule on nepotism that prevents the possibilities of political dynasties in the government.
Veto power. Veto power is the authority to stop an implementation of a bill or a law one-sidedly, in case he or she finds the bill unnecessarily for the state. Since the President will disregard the bill, he or she isn't allowed to choose a certain section inside the bill created by the Legislative Department.
Budgetary powers. According to the Section 11 of Executive Order Number 219, the President shall, in accordance with Section 22, Article 7 of the Constitution, submit within 30 days from the opening of each regular session of the Congress, as the basis for the preparation of the General Appropriations Act, a national government body estimated receipts based on existing and proposed revenue measures and of estimated expenditures. This summarizes the budgetary power vested in the President.
The power to declare martial law. When a martial law is proclaimed nationwide, all of the armed forces in the Philippines become much stern since martial law's application. When the military arm does not supersede civil authority, but is called upon to aid it in the execution of its vital functions.
True na mas lumalakas ang mga militar sa panahon ng martial law, but it doesn't mean na mas mataas sa presidente or even sa civilians. The armed forces, although given greater authority, have no rights to harm people.
As stated in Article 2, Section 3 of the 1987 Constitution of the Philippines, civilian authority is at all times supreme over the military. The Armed Forces of the Philippines is the protector of the people and the state. Its goal is to secure the sovereignty of the state and the integrity of the national territory.
Martial law is implemented with the reason of conserving the people's security during a time of chaos or disorder in the society. The duration of martial law only lasts for 60 days with the approval of the Congress, and if the turmoil is not lifted within 60 days, martial law could be extended to maintain peace and order.
Di ba nagkaroon na rin ng martial law sa atin noon? Nadalas yan ikwento ng lolo't lola ko eh. September 21, 1972. Yon sa pagkakatanda ko.
Sim yan, pero alam mo ba na dapat September 23, 1972 talaga ang declaration ng batas militar sa bansa natin?
Ha? Ba't naging September 21?
Kasi nga, trip ng dating Pangulong Ferdinand Marcos na sa swerte araw ideklara ang batas militar. Diba, 21 is divisible by 7. Hindi nga naman divisible ng lucky number ang 23.
Yun pala yun. Divisible din kaya sa 7 yung date ng checking ni Mami.
Diplomatic power. As a person who is the head of a state, the President must obtain the authorization to stand and represent his governing state to different countries, and the diplomatic power grants this desideratum. In this function, the President cannot sign a treaty or trade agreement without consent, or it has to be concurred by at least two-thirds vote of all the members of the Senate or Congress. This power is not vested only for the strength of the executive, but it is a duty for the President to stay related to the foreign countries surrounding us in order to maintain peace and order between them and attain the political goals each country wants to achieve.
Executive clemency. Perhaps, the greatest power vested in the President is the authority to show his or her mercy and consideration towards a person who committed crime with the stand that he or she is innocent. According to the Section 19 of Article VII of the 1987 Philippine Constitution, except in cases of impeachment or as otherwise provided in this Constitution, the President may grant reprieves, commutations, and pardons, and remits fines and forfeitures after conviction by final judgment. Other people may misjudge this kind of power, but then unless you're in the innocent person's position, some won't understand. Executive clemency is classified in 4 kinds: reprieve, commutation, pardon, and amnesty.
Reprieve is the grant to extend the time before execution, but won't remove your sentence and neither the crime you are sentenced to. An example is when Indonesia used reprieve at Mary Jane Veloso, a Filipino worker who was sentenced to death due to her crime smuggling in order to testify against alleged human traffickers.
Conclusion is that the portion of the punishment implemented together with the person's sentence. Our present President Rodrigo Duterte has used this kind of executive clemency to get 23 elderly prisoners arrested in July 2020.
Pardon is the removal of the punishment given in a crime as an act of mercy towards the individual. Although the person is considered exempted for his/her punishment, it still doesn't erase his/her crime record and is still considered as an offender in the law. Our current president is said to have used pardons more than any recent administrations. One of these is his absolute pardon towards the U.S. Marine Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton for the 2014 killing of Filipino transgender woman Jennifer Laude that caused the public to be furious because of the unfair judgment of the president.
Lastly is amnesty, where the criminal record together with its punishment is completely removed. Hence, the offender is once again pure in the eyes of law. This clemency is usually granted to those who hold political responsibilities, such as former President Benigno Aquino III's validation of amnesty towards Senator Antonio Trillanes IV and 38 other Magdalo soldiers 8 years ago but then provoked by President Rodrigo Duterte.
At dyan nagtatapos ang usapang kapangyarihan. Any questions mga ka-info?
Ako sis, sa dami ng kapangyarihan ng judges niyan, hindi ba dapat inform naman tayong madala kahit pa paano? Paano naman tayo magiging inform sa mga kilos na ginagawa ng ating presidente?
Tama ang point mo. Dapat inform tayo sa mga kaganapan ng gobyerno natin. At syempre, meron ng obligasyon ng presidente sa paksang ito. Take note ha, hindi lamang ang ginawa, ginagawa at gagawin ang pag-uusapan dito, kundi kasama din ang buong plano at agenda ng pamahalaan sa talumpati nito ng presidente upang maisakatuparan ang transparency sa madla.
Interview time!
Actually, kung sasabihin mo yung mismong mga tao sa executive department, they're actually okay kung pagsasabihin mo yung pag-govern nila, it is fine. They created progresses, paano ba sabihin yun? Basta merong progress na nakita, nagkaroon ng development and improvements. And then, paano ba sabihin? Parang mga times na nagkukulang pero kaya naman siyang palitan or kaya naman siyang tapalan ng mga nagawa ng executive branches from before and then from the present. And then kung titignan mo yung buong executive, alam naman natin na mahirap mag-lead, challenging siya, and then kung masabi mo talaga na lahat talaga, opinion ko is they're actually doing much better from before. A little bit, onti lang like mga 10% ganun, 10% out of 100 ganun, yun lang.
One thing that I noticed is the lack of unity between the President and the Vice President. Dahil nagkakaroon ng dalawang partido, nagkakaroon ng pagkakahati-hati, hindi na nabibigyan ng maayos na solusyon yung mga problemang ating kinakaharap. And siguro, isa yun sa mga bagay na kailangan pagtuunan ng pansin ng Vice Presidente at Presidente natin.
We, the sovereign Filipino people, imploring the aid of Almighty in order to build a just and humane society.
Establish a government that shall embody our ideals and aspirations.
Promote the common good, conserve and develop our patrimony, and secure to ourselves and our posterity the blessings of independence
and democracy under the rules
and the regime of truth. Justice, freedom, love, equality, and peace.
Do ordain and promulgate this Constitution